don't know that, but I will find out before the end of the meeting today. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Try that in. Good afternoon. It gives me a great deal of pride and pleasure to introduce you to the first Transgender Allies Summit. And you know, the timing couldn't be any better because, as you might have heard, not only across the country, but recently what we're calling the Transgender Discrimination Bill has been introduced in Tallahassee, which basically can put me in jail for not having the right gender marker on my driver's license. Or if I use the restroom and I have to, if I get challenged by someone, I have to produce my papers. And you stop and think, it's like, is this Nazi Germany that we have to produce papers to use the restroom? ID to P. Discrimination at its ugliest and its most blatant, that's being absolutely smoke-screened in the guise of personal privacy and protections in the bathroom. So it couldn't be a better time for us to get together. I welcome all of you that are here. I welcome the organizations that are here and who will be speaking. I certainly would like to give a special shout out to Patricia Newton, who is here from the city, and she is the Assistant to Director of Human Relations. Let's give her a hand. A stalwart of diversity and inclusion, and we're so thankful that you're here. Collateral material is on the table in the back, and we would encourage you to take some material with you. Our goals for today, and I'll be somewhat brief because we do have a full agenda and we have a lot of dynamic and informative speakers who I want to get in front of you. But our goals are twofold. Number one is so often within our own organizations, even in Central Florida, we're working in a silo in the fact that we might not know what our sister or brother organizations are doing just right down the street. And in a time when the transgender community has never been more visible, has never been more in the crosshairs of discrimination, now is certainly the time for us to join together and build a town around this community. And that's what we need. There's never been a time, it's kind of the perfect storm. We've never been more visible. And we absolutely must be visible to increase awareness, which then increases education, which then increases equality of the transgender community. But we need to do this together, not working in a silo. So what we've attempted to do, and I think you're going to have a very informative afternoon, is we brought together organizations from all over Central Florida. Organizations who support the transgender community in all kinds of different ways and in all kinds of different demographics and age groups. And I'm very pleased that these organizations have decided to come together and share their services and how we can all work together to support the transgender community as this rapidly emerging demographic continues to be more and more visible. In my role as Transgender Inclusion Director at Equality Florida, I always tell my friends at Equality Florida that I perhaps have the best job in the world. I absolutely love what I do. Even though it's a challenge, nothing is more gratifying than working with major corporations who absolutely support inclusion and want to present and have an open and welcoming and inclusive workplace. Working with many enlightened elected officials who assist us in passing human rights ordinances all over the state, where now over 53% of the population of the state of Florida is covered by fully inclusive human rights ordinances, including a unanimous vote by the city of Orlando. Yay. But then lastly, to come together in strength and on the right side of history to fight against discriminatory practices that we're seeing that are coming out against the transgender community. And that's kind of the next frontier. You know, as marriage equality has finally arrived, and we certainly are optimistic that the Supreme Court is going to validate that in April. We're finding that the transgender community, as I said, is now in the crosshairs of discrimination. And with our visibility comes the animosity, the lack of understanding, the hatred, and the discrimination. So together we can change that. And we change that through just that: awareness, education, sharing each other's stories and what each organization is doing to support the community, so we can build on that solid foundation of solidarity. So with that, we're going to get started. And our first speaker comes to us from Jacksonville, bless her heart, braving all the way the traffic on I-4 from Jacksonville here. Representing We Are Straight Allies, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce Chevara Orrin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It is really an honor to be here. And as Gina mentioned, I am Chevara Orrin. I'm the founder and co-creator of We Are Straight Allies. It's a human rights campaign dedicated to supporting equality for the LGBT community, and more specifically, helping to pass a fully comprehensive human rights ordinance in the city of Jacksonville. I'm really honored to be with you here today, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a few minutes, why. I just spent the weekend in Selma, Alabama, walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, honoring those people that marched 50 years ago. And so as I think about standing here today, 50 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, it is monumental because we are gathered in this place in a way that would not have been possible just a few short years ago. And the other thing that's super special about today is I am celebrating my life. It's my birthday. And I can't imagine a more beautiful way than to honor my history, my legacy, and my future than standing before you as an ally, an advocate, and a comrade as we champion freedom, justice, and equality. I am often asked why this specific work. The easy answer is that it's the right thing to do. Right? The more complex and personal response is that I am a daughter of the South and the civil rights movement. I am named after Che Guevara, the Argentinian revolutionary. My mother is a white Jewish civil rights, human rights, women's liberation activist, and my father was one of the fiery lieutenants of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He was behind many of the major strategies of the civil rights movement, including the 1963 Children's Crusade in Birmingham that ultimately led to the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. My first vivid memory of community activism and advocacy was sleeping in a concrete tube across the street from the White House. For those of you who are old enough to remember, you used to be able to get to that park across the street. I see some heads nodding. You can't now because of security. But we were sleeping inside of concrete tubes, drinking water and eating rice, and we were protesting famine in Pakistan, and we were also supporting the Bangladesh Liberation War. I was 3 years old when that happened. I founded We Are Straight Allies shortly after arriving in Jacksonville, Florida, a little over 2 years ago. I moved there fall of 2012, and the week that I arrived in town, it was my welcome to Jacksonville, the Human Rights Ordinance failed by 1 vote. I was in that city council room, 500 people, standing room only, and to my right was an older white gentleman, probably in his late 60s, early 70s, and he was wearing a rainbow lapel pin, and he had tears streaming down his face, and he was sobbing and shaking. And behind me was another man who looked as though he could have been his brother, his biological brother, and he was wearing a Confederate pin, and he was cheering. And I was thinking, my mind was swirling. I couldn't wait to get back to my car and call my husband to ask him, what the hell are we doing in Jacksonville? We have moved to a community that can't pass a comprehensive Human Rights Act. And as quickly as I posed the question, I knew the answer. We were in Jacksonville. My father was in Birmingham. And you are here today to impact change. Because the reality is that we have many opportunities each and every day to do just that. And what I've learned through a personal journey filled with tragedy and triumph is that we never, ever need seek permission to create. We never need seek permission to challenge unjust systems of oppression, to join hands in solidarity, to stand boldly, courageously, for something that looms so much larger than ourselves. One of our straight allies in our campaign is Louis Lopez, whose daughter Nina is transgender. We've reproduced, this ad is also in English, but it's in Spanish because we believe in communicating with people in the way that they communicate. We have a rabbi ad also in Hebrew and English, and we have a postcard being printed in Braille. When we interviewed Louis, because the campaign is both a print ad and video campaign, he was telling us that he thought his daughter was initially gay when his daughter was his son, and he said it that way. And then throughout the entire interview, he interchanged pronouns, he shook his head, he got very confused, and he kept apologizing. He kept saying, I'm so sorry, I'm going to get this right, I promise I'm going to get this right. And then ultimately what he said was, all I know is that I love my child. He said, and that's all that I know. And I know that I will always love my child. Whether my child is John or Nina or something else, I will love my child, and that's all that I know. And that's what I know, that I love our humanness, whatever shape or form it comes in. And that's why I do this work. While I may not share the exactness of your lived transgender experiences, I do know discrimination and bigotry. I know what it feels like for a community to be fractured with widening chasms that separate us because of our uniqueness. I know that we are inextricably bound, and I know that I am not free if you are not free. One of my favorite authors and activists, and she's a self-described, she's no longer living, but self-described feminist lesbian activist, Audre Lorde, reminds us that it is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So in Jacksonville, before I walked into the fire of creating change in a community that might not have quite been ready for the type of direct action that I was born into, I remembered my legacy. And I remembered living in a big house on Marjorie Street in Memphis, Tennessee with Black Panthers until the police came one day and surrounded the house with tear guns and gas. I remembered food stamp lines and welfare worker home visits. They searched under beds and interrogated us about whether or not we had any uncles living in the house, and once they counted a television without sight or sound as an asset. I remember Mr. Jack, my white next-door neighbor, sitting on his porch with a shotgun, pointing at me and my sister as he called us nigger girls and half-breed. And the wonderful Saturday we came home from Girl Scouts, and he had spray-painted the side of the house with nigger-loving hunky. And what my mother said about that was, girls, Mr. Jack sits on that porch and he is mired with bigotry and hatred and racism, and that is his problem. And I remember thinking, yeah, but I'm 9, and if he pulls that trigger of that shotgun, it's going to definitely be our problem because we'll be splattered across that lawn. And when I was 12, what I realized she meant is that even if he had killed us and the world was devoid of 2 little brown girls, that it would have still been his problem. And when Gina and I and so many others in Jacksonville spent last year going back and forth to Atlantic Beach, and we heard vicious hatred spewing from community members about the transgender community, I remembered what my mother said. And I remembered that it was their problem. I was reminded time and time again of her wisdom and her patience and her love of humanity, which helps keep me sane and sound in this work. We've been able to do some amazing things in Jacksonville. We hosted a transgender panel with State of the Reunion, which is a nationally syndicated NPR show with host Al Letson at the Museum of Contemporary Art. We also leveraged our relationship with the Florida Times-Union, historically a very, very conservative newspaper in our community. And they ran for the first time ever a story about transgender lives, and they featured Trisha Russell, who does a lot of work with us in Jacksonville, and Cam W., a young Black transgender man. And we provided ally training to hundreds of people in the city of Jacksonville. At the heart of our ally movement is the critical understanding of the roots of our connection and the price that was paid for our freedom. And I reflected upon that an awful lot this weekend in Selma, Alabama, the real price and the real cost of freedom. And so for me, the question always remains, what's going to be my lasting contribution? What will the history books say about me or you? Will we be a footnote, or will there be volumes about the movement, this amazing movement for transgender equality that we are leading, that we are supporting? I suppose the single question that I ask myself every single day is someone else's life better because I lived? Is someone else's life better because I lived? We are standing at a crossroads, and I was never more clear about that than this weekend in Selma, because I believe we have two choices, and our movement is based on that. We have two choices in this world, and it's to engage or not. History often repeats itself. When Florida became the 36th state to legalize gay marriage, I thought of Congressman John Lewis and Coretta Scott King, who tirelessly were in support of LGBT equality long before it became mainstream. I thought of Fannie Lou Hamer and Harry Belafonte and Harriet Tubman and Jimmy Lee Jackson, and I thought of Bayard Rustin, who was jailed not only for his Quaker faith, but for practicing homosexuality in the 60s. Our ally movement is one of solidarity, which to me means walking with a group that's being oppressed rather than working for a group that's searching for freedom. And our statement is simple. We are mothers and fathers teaching our children to love and accept each other's intrinsic humanness. We are sisters and brothers holding the hands of our siblings with great pride in who they are. We are co-workers who want to see our colleagues treated fairly, free from bias and discrimination. We are young and old who believe that we live in the land of the free, where all people are created equal. We are clergy and missionaries, shepherding our congregations to welcome everyone into their hearts, openly and without judgment. We are veterans who have fought for the freedom of others across the ocean and who will continue to fight for basic human rights on our own native soil. We are citizens who believe in everyone's right to pursue their own happiness. From Stonewall to the demise of DOMA to the recent federal legislation, we are the family and friends of Harvey Milk, Marco McMillian, Matthew Shepard, Ebony Whitaker, Amanda Gonzalez Andular, Deshonda Sanchez, Lamia Beard, Ty Underwood, Leela Alcorn, Taja de Jesus, and Penny Proud. We are following in the legacy of other great movements, the abolitionist movement, the women's suffrage movement, the Eastern European liberation movement, the farm workers movement, the civil rights movement, and the feminist movement. We are adding our voices to the growing chorus in this fight. We are friends, we are family, we are co-workers, we are communities, we are straight allies, because nothing is more important than our humanity. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us that human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. I know that I stand upon the shoulders and shoulder to shoulder with creators and builders and dreamers and catalysts. I stand with transgender activists Gina Duncan and Cam W. and Tricia Russell, and one of the fiercest freedom fighters that I know down in Houston, Monica Roberts. Today, like every day, is one of possibility. And I stand here with you today, knowing that there is incredible possibility in this fight as we move towards freedom and justice. Every day, what I think about when we do this work is that we are able to define and redefine the work. We are able to define and redefine ourselves, and our commitment in our community to ourselves and to each other, we know will be our enduring legacy as allies. Thoreau said it best. He said, most people lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with songs still in them. Most people lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with songs still in them. So we challenge our allies. We challenge them to sing while they're here. We challenge them to sing a song of freedom and justice. We challenge them to sing a song that builds a better world. We have made progress. We are making progress. but that does not mean that we still don't have a long way to go. The road to freedom is long and arduous. Again, that was never more clear to me than when I marched across that bridge, because there we were marching across that bridge, the same bridge that my father and Dr. King and Ambassador Young and John Lewis marched across 50 years ago. And here we are in this same country, pushing Congress to do something about the stringent voter ID rules and other voting rules that are taking us back and stripping away the voting rights that those people fought so hard for. I do believe in my lifetime, and I didn't believe this a few years ago, and I'm not quite sure exactly what changed, but I do believe in my lifetime. While I'm here, we will see LGBT equality in this nation, in every state, in every city, in every town, in every little hamlet. Dr. King talked about the fierce urgency of now, and one of my favorite quotes is, he says, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." And I say, if not now, then when? If not you and me, then who? Thank you.